Today's Evening First Alert Weather Show is brought to you by Bresky Siding.
And good Wednesday evening, Mid-Michigan. Chief Meteorologist Chris Easlick with your Wednesday night forecast update. Busy day for some parts of Mid-Michigan, starting with our live cam in downtown Flint, one of the spots that picked up some snow throughout the day today, and perhaps a little bit more than some parts of Genesee County bargained for. I'm sure there were other parts of some of our southern communities that got a little bit more than they were expecting as well. Basically what happened, we had some stronger bands of snow come through. They took advantage of a moisture feed off of Lake Huron and really had some intense snowfall rates at times. A little bit more in certain areas. We had, if you tuned into last night's stream, we had about a trace to 2 inches over most of the area. And just based on some of the totals that I have seen, it's mainly the southern sections of Genesee County, places like Fenton, Grand Blanc. Some of those areas seem to be the reason, or the areas that we kind of missed a little bit with totals that were maybe a little bit closer to about 4 or 5 inches or even 3 inches in some cases. So happens sometimes with these lake enhanced snowfall bands, and I'm sure as we go through tonight it'll be interesting to watch in some of our lake effect zones that are currently under advisories. I'll be very interested to see how some of that banding of snow plays out, and if we have any areas that get a little bit of a jackpot or areas that don't get quite as much, just typically is what happens in some of these lake effect scenarios. Now, the one thing I found interesting, though, is the official report that came out of Flint Bishop Airport tonight was about 1.3 inches of snow. So that fit within our trace to 2 inch range, and we didn't necessarily want to suggest that everybody was getting a trace. I know somebody asked me about that too, but we tried to cover as broad of an area as possible because of some of the scattered lake effect bands that would be coming through. And so it wasn't meant to say the entire area was going to get a trace. So we definitely got more than we bargained for in a few areas, but Flint kind of fitting in that 1 to 2 inch range, and that area worked out. But again, some areas a little bit further to the south did not. And I know there were a lot of areas, just for a quick run through here, the south of the TV5 viewing area that got certainly more than they bargained for. We'll click on some of these. It looks like just northwest of Brighton, about 3.5 inches, around Pontiac, 6 inches. Seems like we've got another total of about 5 inches, and then really just to the west of Pontiac itself, about 3.3. West of Harrison, towards that Farmington Hills area, looks like about 2, and then another total of around 3. Let's see what we've got. Croswell reporting snow tonight. That's about 1.2, and then just on the border between Sanilac County and down to the south towards Port Huron, looks like about 1.5 inches. So the totals varied pretty widely today, and I think that's suggestive of, again, more of those lake effect bands that flare up from time to time. And if I take a look back about 3 hours or so, this is about 6:30 or just after, you can clearly see some well-defined snowfall bands mixed in there. And so it's not surprising that Flint Bishop may have avoided that and only picked up about 1.3, but then you get this little narrow stripe that goes through an area like Grand Blanc, picks up about, maybe 4 or 5 inches of snow based on some of the unofficial reports that I've gotten. And then that band fades away and we're right back to kind of what we expect for the rest of the night. But I think, and also another interesting thing this evening is, of course, we've got those winter weather advisories in place for Huron and Sanilac County. Those are in effect until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But if you look at the radar in those areas, even with the radar in Ontario turned on, and I even turned the sensitivity up a little bit, there's a pretty big radar hole over here that's just not picking up on that lake effect snow very well. You can see hints of it that are almost just offshore of Iosco County. You can clearly see that northerly flow. And also, if you look at our what we call a METAR map, which is a list of some of the observations around the area. Let me zoom in on this. This is where we get some reports from some of the weather stations around airports. I know you probably can't see it too well, but this is the airport in Tuscola County. This is the airport in Huron County. There's nothing that you can see over these areas with snow. but those ground reporting stations are reporting snow. So what is probably happening in those areas is you're probably getting the radar overshooting some of that lake effect snow. And so unlike the summertime, when we're talking about thunderstorms that build themselves up to 40, 50, 60,000 feet tall, lake effect snow is much smaller than that. And so by the time you take the radar in Detroit, or even the radar across Lake Huron into Ontario, by the time that beam gets up, and I'm going to move my hand here so you can actually see it. I'm looking at the camera angle. But by the time that beam gets up to portions of Huron County, and even in some cases Tuscola County, some of that lake effect snow might be right underneath, and it might not be detected by the radar very well. And so you get that little radar hole. But clearly, based on observations in Tuscola County at the airport and at the airport in Huron County, we are clearly getting some snowfall. And so that's kind of how things look tonight. Radar not necessarily telling the whole story. Even if we switched over to the sky tracker, that's not really showing it all that well either. So just know that even though the radar looks like things have stopped, you may still be seeing snow for several more hours. And our expectation with the snowfall map is about 4 to 7 inches in portions of Huron County, northeastern Tuscola, and also northern Sanilac on the southern side of Huron County. Those areas we expect to pick up about 4 to 7 inches of snow. I would say 7 will be on the higher end of that range. We did add a plus to the end, just in case, an isolated location, kind of like we've seen in Genesee County today. I'm sure Lapeer County has a few locations as well, but that's just to account for maybe some areas that boom a little bit rather than bust. And so we think there's at least an outside shot that maybe somebody could get over 7, so we accounted for that there. But our expectation is it's a small area, and it would be really tough to pinpoint exactly where that would happen, and probably more of an exception rather than the rule. And so we didn't put it on the map, but we just kind of accounted for it just in case, again, somebody gets the snow jackpot. I'll leave it up to you whether that is something you would like or not. So that's kind of where things stand for tonight. I think most of the trace to 2-inch zone worked pretty well. If we look at downtown Saginaw on our camera network, let me see if I can pull that up. I don't really think we got a dusting. I live in Saginaw. My house had a little bit of snow this morning. Not really enough to call significant. There's Saginaw right about here. Our live camera there, clear streets, clear event park across the way. And if we look at our US 10 camera, that one is also pretty underwhelming. So I think most of us panned out. If you have a total that was over 2 inches in that trace to 2-inch zone, I'd love to have it just to kind of gain some perspective on how things are looking tonight. But that is sort of where things stand. So let me check the comments really quick. We'll get to Friday too. I know some people have had some questions on Friday, so Sheila's asking that question. Let me see what else we've got going on. Good evening, Sherry from Gladwin. Hi, Veronica. Derek, you're on tonight. Autumn, hi from Midland. Wendy. Travel in the morning could be a little icy depending on where you are. So Wendy, you'll have to remind me. I know you've told me before. John, I don't think you'll have to worry where you're at. Kingston schools, you going to have school tomorrow? Could be close. Kind of depends on how this lake effect plays out tonight and who gets hit the hardest. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's completely off the table that Kingston could have a snow day because you're closer to that Sanilac County line. So you're a bit closer to the eastern side of Tuscola County, which could get a little bit more. I would say if I had to pick, because you're a little bit closer towards the southern part, are you going to get enough snow? I think it'll be a closer call than, say, northern Tuscola or northeastern Tuscola, but never say never. I don't think it's completely impossible. And also, one thing that I think is going to be interesting with some of the snow that falls tonight is the fact that our temperatures are so cold that even a little bit of snow might have the tendency to ice things up and cause some slippery travel tomorrow morning. Even if you only get a little bit, you might not have too much snow to worry about. All right, so let us take a look at some of the other comments really quick, and then we'll get right back to it. Hi, Denise from Reese, Sheila. Gladwin didn't get any snow today. Yeah, so Sherry, you were one of the spots that missed out because of how scattered it was. Tony, is snow done for the night in Clio? I'd say any meaningful snow is probably done. Bay City didn't get any snow. Yeah, I mean, again, scattered coverage, and that's why we had such a broad area. Very little to up to 2 inches in that area. And clearly on the lower end for Bay City. And in some cases, 0 for parts of the area tonight. All right, so here is your hour by hour. The rest of the evening, again, just to show you that radar one more time, we've got a pretty big snow hole showing up over here. Radar overshooting lake effect snow. We have confirmation at the ground observation sites that we are getting snow to fall, but it's just sneaking under that radar beam. So as we go through the rest of the night, you'll get that northerly flow, and that northerly flow just keeps on going right into the early hours of Thursday morning. And you'll notice one thing that I think is interesting. If you look at the placement of this band right here, let me get my pointer tool. This band right here, watch it from 3 o'clock to 4 to 7. It tends to move to the east a little bit. And so what might happen is you might get a start in western Huron County tonight, and it's going to be a little bit tough to see because of that radar hole to really judge how this is going to play out. I think that makes things very difficult. But the expectation is that's going to move its way eastward across the county and then just fade away into the morning hours of tomorrow. And you know why it fades away? Look at the wind direction, a little bit more northwesterly. And so what that will do is push some of this lake effect offshore into the morning, and then things dry out a little bit and we shut it down for Thursday. But then our focus will start to turn towards Friday morning. So the break that we get on Thursday is going to be very short-lived. And Scott, no surprise, snowing in Kindy, but it's always good to have that ground truth. Derek, this morning, what we got this evening, maybe 3/4 of an inch. So yeah, again, into that trace to 2-inch zone that we had for Mount Pleasant. So I think it worked out a little bit better than I might have thought earlier this evening based on some of the reports that were coming out of Genesee County and the surrounding areas where we got some of those snow jackpots. But it seems like a pretty underwhelming performance in a lot of areas that were in that trace to 2-inch zone. Did get some totals again around an inch in Flint itself at the airport, about 1.3. So kind of right smack dab in the middle of that range. Tony, we'll go over wind chill in a second. One thing I did want to show you, for those who are in the thumb especially, one thing that kind of, if you've been watching our streams this week, you've noticed we've kind of increased the snowfall in the thumb a little bit each day. And that's normal just because we get better signals as we get closer with lake effect because it tends to be a little bit smaller scale in the atmosphere. But what I can show you is the likelihood. One of the reasons we arrived at 4 inches for that area, let me pull that up, is this is a, and of course it's not going to work for me. I'm not sure why that's happening. All right, I'm not going to be able to pull it up, but there were some signs in what we look at with our probability forecasting, which takes all of our models and kind of puts them all in one big bowl, mixes them up, and tells us how likely certain scenarios are. But there is a portion of Huron County towards the central and even into the western half today giving about an 80 to 90% chance of 4 inches of snow or more. So what earlier this week started out as more of a chance for snow on the east side of Huron County, kind of backed that up a little bit to the west today. And one of the reasons for that was we talked earlier this week about how the change in the wind direction could cause some of those shifts in the snowfall map. And that's kind of what we have here and what you've seen today. We've expanded that a little bit farther to the west. So anyway, Owendale, windy and snowing too. So we get a little ground truth from Owendale. Appreciate it. And yeah, St. Joe, Michigan has been, they've had some whiteout conditions. I know that area can get pretty windy down by St. Joe and Benton Harbor. So we'll go to feels like temperatures first because this happens before Friday. But we've got wind chills that are later tonight falling near and below zero and perhaps maybe as cold as about 0 to 15 degrees below zero tomorrow morning. And so we expect tomorrow to be pretty chilly. In the afternoon, it gets a little bit better. We climb up above zero at least in most areas, but I wouldn't really expect a warm day tomorrow. I think high temperatures will be right around the upper teens to low 20s. You keep the wind going, and those wind chills pretty nasty all day. Maybe not the coldest we'll see all winter. We're getting into the heart of it now. Late January and February, typically the coldest time of the winter for us, especially the end of January, early February, before things start making the climb towards the end of February. But we've got a stretch of wind chills that pretty much lasts through Thursday afternoon that will be around 10 degrees or below, and at times a little bit below zero. Things don't look so bad if we move out to Friday. Just giving you a little sneak peek as that next round of snow moves through. We start to get some wind chills back in the 20s, but until then, it's going to be pretty cold. Cass City seeing some snowflakes, so Braden, appreciate that report. Phil, any chance of snow in Saginaw tonight? I wouldn't expect a ton. Kind of the same answer that I gave for Clio. I think you're done with anything that we would call meaningful. And frankly, in Saginaw, we didn't get a lot of meaningful snow today. I got maybe, I would say, a trace or a little bit more on the west side of Saginaw. That was about it. So I'm not sure what downtown got. It seemed like we got a little bit when I arrived to work this afternoon. There seemed to be a little evidence left over, but I would say I wouldn't expect anything meaningful. Heather from Sand Point. Snow and crazy wind off the lake. Sand Point is definitely an area that can get some wild weather in scenes like this. Heather, I don't know if it's possible. Nothing in Linwood, Bob, that kind of fits with some other areas around you. Seems like snow just kind of avoided you today in Bay County, or at least a lot of Bay County. John, Port Austin, a lot of wind and heavy snow bands going through, maybe an inch or so on the ground. Thanks, John. John, feel free to follow up. I'll comment on my page here, just so I can get in the comments so anyone can send me reports easily. But John and Heather, if you look at my meteorologist page that I just responded in the comments, feel free to give me updated totals tomorrow or even later tonight. Would love to. And Bob following up with always skips around. Yeah, we've had a couple of rounds of snow in Bay County this year. Got off to a faster start, but yeah, everyone sometimes feels like it goes around them quite a bit. But yeah, for those of you who have sent reports and you don't follow my page already, even if you don't want to follow, that's fine. But would love to get your reports through tonight and tomorrow from areas like Sandpoint and Port Austin. And I have no doubt, John, that wind is whipping out on the shoreline. So anyway, let's go into Friday really quick. It's coming up on 9:30. I'm going to have to get ready for our 10 o'clock newscast here pretty soon. But we've got 8:30 tonight, or 8:30 Thursday night. We fast forward into 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday. We fast forward a little bit more to 5:30, and then snow becomes a little bit more widespread around 7 and 8 o'clock, so maybe a little slower going for the bus routes early Friday. We've also got snow continuing from late morning into early afternoon, and then it kind of pulls away from us. We've got some scattered snow that continues into Friday night. That's a little bit more hit or miss, and then it slowly just kind of tapers off into Saturday afternoon. So I haven't explored the amounts for Friday a ton. At first glance this afternoon seemed more like a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 type snow. But we'll have more details on that tomorrow once we can kind of clear out what's in the system now. That'll be easier to kind of interpret some of that data into tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. But that's kind of my feeling right now about a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 type snowfall. Eric, I would say my focus has primarily been on our lake effect chance the last couple of days. We've kind of looked a little bit farther out, but I haven't spent enough time on it to feel confident about anything. I think I'll have more time once we kind of get this out of our system and we get through Friday too, and we'll see what happens. Andrew, what are the chances of school being called off for tomorrow? Got to know where you're at, so feel free to let me know. I would say if you're in the advisory area, if you're in Huron or Sanilac County, or even maybe that northeast quadrant of Tuscola County, I would say you have a chance. Outside of those areas, we'll see what happens. Wendy says I deserve a gold medal. I appreciate that, Wendy. Lake effect snow's a headache. I feel like we've been kind of driving ourselves nuts trying to perfect this snowfall map that we have put out there for today. And like I said, we've had our fair share of adjustments this time around, made our last adjustments this afternoon before things really got going with the lake effect that we expect to add up tonight. But sometimes you got to do that. We'd be kind of doing you a disservice if we didn't make adjustments right up until the beginning. At some point, you got to let the forecast ride, but we try to be as thorough as possible. Andrew Badax, I would say you've got a good chance to be off tomorrow, but we'll see what happens. Ubley schools, a chance you'll be off tomorrow too. Just to simplify, I would say anyone in Huron County, you've got a pretty good chance to be off tomorrow. I actually have a school visit in Huron County tomorrow. I don't know if that's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. Christopher, how much snow for Friday? Cool name, by the way. I would say right now, thinking about a 1 to 3, 1 to 4 type snow. But stay tuned on that. I think we'll get some better data tomorrow and have a better answer for you. Eric, I did get a report of snow drifts in the thumb from one of my reliable spotters, Brad. He is in Ruth. And he said it's whipping pretty good out there as well. And we've gotten some reports out of Port Austin and Sand Point that the wind is really cranking out there tonight too. And Chris, did you post a picture of Ubley in the comments? Or did you post that somewhere else? Let me know, because I don't know if pictures show up in the chat, so I might have to look on the actual Facebook feed. Just let me know where you post that. John says, coming down in Forestville and blowing too. Yeah, that's another thing. A lot of you who are giving me reports out of those areas, in Sanilac County and Huron County especially, I don't even know how well we're going to be able to measure this. It's fluffy when it comes down. It is not a wet snow. And then it's going to blow around as it's coming down because of the wind. And then once it's on the ground, it might not even stick around. So I think that'll be interesting to see how those measurements play out tomorrow too. Are we going to get more drifts than anything? I remember a couple of years ago around Christmas time, I think it was a We had some of the first blizzard warnings or blizzard watches we've had in a while. And we didn't necessarily get a ton of snow on this side of the state. They got buried a little bit more on the west side. But man, we had some drifts for even just a little bit of snow. Those drifts piled up. And Chris, blowing snow pretty good in Midland too. Interesting. All right, Chris, thank you for Chris with a K this time. Yes on our feed. So I'll take a look at that. Much appreciated, Chris. So yeah, anyway, I think that's where we're going to end the stream for tonight because we've got our newscast coming up in about 25 minutes. Appreciate all of you for joining. Feel free to post any reports or photos in the comments. Would love to have them, or just send them in message form to my page. That's usually the quickest way to get them to me. We will do a post-mortem on this tomorrow and see what the snowfall totals turned out to be. And we'll see how widespread maybe some of those totals were in Genesee County. I know NOAA tries to put a map together, and we'll see if how narrow some of those snow bands might have been in Genesee and Lapeer counties. I'm really interested to see that. I'm not interested because it busted some of our forecast, but I think scientifically speaking, it would be pretty cool to see. So anyway, hope all of you have a great night. Appreciate you joining, and we will see you all tomorrow. Thank you for watching.